Yaroslav Askarov has requested a trade and says he will not report to the Milwaukee Admirals training camp. What are Barry Trotz and Askarov's next moves in this goaltender GM standoff? We'll talk about it on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast, and thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this episode with a shout out to our Locked On Pred heads. Those are our everydayers who tune in each and every day to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support, and we love that we get to spend a little bit of your day with you. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
On today's show, we're going to dive a little deeper into the Yaroslav Askarov drama. Of course, we did record initial reaction episode to yesterday's breaking news that goaltender Yaroslav Askarov has requested a trade and says he is not going to be going to AHL training camp. You can check out that video on our channel as well. Today, we want to talk about what comes next, how the Milwaukee Admirals are going to be affected by this decision, and we're going to debate who is to blame for this situation getting to this boiling over point. All right, Emma, before we dive into some new aspects of this, just to recap, your initial reaction to the shenanigans of yesterday.
Dumb. That's my initial reaction. It's dumb. It's a dumb move. I think, understanding the frustration of the player with his situation, but, if it just seems like a very emotionally charged decision and statement to be making when you are as young and inexperienced as you are. So that was kind of my initial reaction. Not entirely surprised, but it's disappointing.
Yeah. I think back to some words of wisdom from my grandmother, who said a lot of wise things, but she always used to say, you can't put a young head on you can't put an old head on a young body. And I'm like, this is the perfect case of this, where you're like, oh, if you just had a little bit more wisdom, you might have played your cards a little bit differently, and this could have been better. I also think back to a piece of advice that I was given years ago, and it's, you always leave well. No matter what the situation is, no matter how frustrated you are with the situation, it is the mature thing and the wise thing to leave well. And I'm not 100% sure Yaroslav Askarov is going to exit his time with the Nashville Predators franchise in a way that is well, especially with the way that this has all gone down. This is not a good look. It's just not a great look.
No.
Now, I get why Yaroslav Askarov wants a change of scenery. I also can say I get, why Barry Trotz feels the way he does. And let's kick it off by talking about Barry Trotz has been asked about this news. And he said that his expectation is for Yaroslav Askarov to report to camp when it opens in September. That was his comment after this news broke. How likely do you think it is that he does report to camp, Emma?
Well, I think it's an important distinction, first of all, to be made. Askarov has said that to my knowledge, has said that he won't report to Milwaukee's training camp.
Correct.
I think he will still report to big camp, to the NHL camp, but I think he's trying to send a message that says it's NHL or nothing for me, which, again, dumb. But I think that there's a better chance, that he shows up to camp as long as he's not traded. It's just, again, we talked about this on our initial reaction, but the timing of it is not the smartest, I think, from his point of view, because you're now, if you do come into big camp, did you really think that was that coming out with this kind of bold statement was going to help you or help your chances, because it's the team doesn't have to trade you. And Barry Trotz has shown he won't if he doesn't get an offer that he likes. So, it's just, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. If he shows up to camp, it's gonna be hashtag awkward. Because here are some things that I have observed in the short time that Andrew Brunette has been the head coach of the Nashville Predators, and we've been covering him. He has a zero tolerance policy for BS. Like, Andrew Brunette don't play games. And not that he may not be sympathetic, and having been a hockey player, he understands the frustration of playing time and wanting to see your career go a certain trajectory and believing it should go that way and it not going that way. So it's not that he would be unsympathetic, but Andrew Brunette also just does not have time. Like, this is just not for him, as my daughter would say. This is just not for him.
No.
To salvage what has been said, Yaroslav Askarov is absolutely going to have to show up at Nashville Predators camp and outplay Scott Wedgwood. Because otherwise, he's going to look foolish. He's drawn a line in the sand, and he absolutely has to back it up in camp. You have to show that you are NHL ready. And to do that, you have to beat out Scott Wedgwood. And he also is gonna have to answer questions. Like, you are gonna have to explain to the media why you chose to do what you did, why you chose to say what you said, and why the timing on it. And I think all three of those have aspects of uncomfortable to it. Bruno, he ain't playing games. Yaroslav Askarov, you had darn well better outplay Scott Wedgwood, and you're gonna have to answer questions. And it just makes me feel a little uncomfortable inside, Emma.
It wouldn't surprise me if Yaroslav Askarov suddenly forgot all the progress he had made in his English at this year's training camp. I remember.
We'll call in Igor, sir, and it will be like, we'll use our translator app.
God, yes, perfect. I just I remember in college we had a guy on the basketball team who was from Greece, and he would always pretend he didn't speak English, like, so he didn't have to do media. Like, I had classes with this guy. He spoke English. Like, anyway, I think, though, to your point, that that point is valid not just in training camp if he shows up with the Predators. I think it's valid wherever he ends up next.
True.
Now that he has made this very bold statement and, kind of said, I want out, I want to go somewhere else, he is really going to have to back that up with the way that he plays. And, I'm not saying he can't, but I think that he just has such little experience, like, in the grand scheme of things, not just in the NHL, even in the AHL. It's been 2
Right.
seasons. And I think that he is expecting to be fast tracked to a job that he is not ready for, whether he thinks he is or not. And he thinks that he can kind of buck the trend, buck the tradition or buck the trajectory path of practically almost every other goaltender in the NHL.
Right.
Including Pekka Rinne, including UC Saros, including, some of the best goaltenders in the NHL. They all would probably tell you that they could benefit or did benefit from an extra year in the AHL. The goaltending position is just different. And I think that he, it's clearly, I think you said it yesterday, that it just shows an inflated or a distorted sense of self-importance. And it's like, okay, you were a top level pick in 2020, but like, that was at the draft. Once you're drafted and once you come in to the AHL, it's an even playing field. You're
Right.
all on the same level. It's clean slate. And so you're not special anymore, frankly, until you prove that you are. And I just don't think that he's done that yet. And I think he could have done that, like you said, if he had played his cards a little differently. And if he had chosen, to take maybe the more mature path with this. But now that he's, gone out and done this, I just have to think. I know I brought it up yesterday. What is his agent thinking letting him do this? If this statement is your agent talking, you need to get a new agent. And if it's
Yes.
you talking, then you need to grow up. I mean, that's just how I see it.
Check your inner circle, because
Mhm.
somebody in his inner circle should have sat down and had some hard conversations with him. And again, not that his feelings and frustrations are not valid, not
Right.
that his wishes and desires are not valid to be traded, but what the way you've gone about this, it's not a good look, friend. It's not a good look.
It just seems like he is putting too much stock into the fans and the media hype and not enough into the actual work that needs to be done to get to where he needs to be.
Absolutely. Coming up, we're going to talk about what an Askarov-less Milwaukee Admirals team could look like next season. And also, what could Yaroslav Askarov realistically, that's the key word, realistically fetch on the trade market? We'll talk about that. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Emma. So we've kind of talked about how this is maybe not the best look right now for Yaroslav Askarov. And we've talked a little bit about, how he would fit in with the Nashville Predators at training camp and what that would need to look like. But if he does not report to the AHL training camp with the Milwaukee Admirals and does not play in the AHL for the Admirals, the question becomes, who is up next in net for the Admirals? Well, the Admirals have signed Matt Murray, not that Matt Murray, to a 1-year, two-way deal worth $775,000. This is an undrafted goaltender. He has played with the Texas Stars over the last 3 seasons. He has 71 total AHL games with the Texas Stars, has a .907 save percentage. He does have 5 shutouts in the AHL. He has played 4 NHL games for Dallas. He has an .885 save percentage. Did have a shutout against Minnesota in January. We all like to see Minnesota get shut out. So that's kind of who the Predators have brought in. They also have Ethan Hayter. He was a 2019 5th-round pick for the Predators. He has signed a one-way deal for next season with them as well. Just wrapped up his senior year, coincidentally, at UConn with Matthew Wood, who's no longer going to be at UConn, but these are the days of our lives when it comes to the transfer portal. So when you look at goaltending in net next season, if Yaroslav Askarov sticks to it and does not do any sort of AHL action, you have to acknowledge that who they have in the pipeline are not Yaroslav Askarov caliber players, nor are they probably Devin Cooley or Troy Grosnick caliber players right now. So Milwaukee is looking at a season where they're not going to have kind of a star in net or a really high caliber 1B who can sort of take over some games and keep them winning. So it does sort of change a little bit for Milwaukee in net if he follows through with this.
Yeah, I think it changes a lot. I mean, first of all, it makes that Matt Murray signing look real smart right
Yes.
now.
Yes.
And he might be kind of sweating a little bit. I mean, just like, oh, I'm the starter now.
I guess I'm the guy.
Yeah, but I think, I remember when he was coming up in Dallas's system, and I feel comfortable with him. Again, not Yaroslav Askarov. Few are. That's okay.
Right.
I certainly don't think it's a bad position to be in, but I also think it could be, it's a little bit of a call to action for the rest of the team in Milwaukee, that you kind of
Preach.
have to step up. And you see that a lot, like at any level, whether it's a rookie goaltender, whether it's the backup goaltender, someone who doesn't play a lot, maybe isn't as reliable in net. You see that a lot, where the team kind of rallies around them and, kind of steps up their level. And it kind of fits with the timeline of what we're trying to see from Milwaukee this season, especially with the forwards. There were a lot of first year AHL rookies on the roster this last season. We're going to be looking for, the next level out of a lot of those guys, especially the forwards, Zach LaRue, Reed Schaefer, Fedor Svechkov, Joachim Kemmel. Like you're going to expect to see more out of them. And now this just elevates that expectation for them. So I think it'll kind of show maybe what they've got in their system, and really kind of elevate the level of urgency there.
I like that. I think it is important to understand that other players need to step up their game, and to also remember that it was players like Mark Del Gaizo, like Spencer Stasny, at times, like Zachary LaRue, Fedor Svechkov, Joachim Kemmel, who also elevated the team and helped them win all those games. They were also players who played all of the postseason. And can I just say, if I'm Zachary LaRue, and this is just me being petty, I don't think even Zachary LaRue is this petty, but I would be like, I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of all of the goals I scored in the postseason that tied the entire AHL postseason goal scoring. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
While you were sitting on the bench, Yaroslav Askarov.
I'm just saying. So as much as you have to admit that now Milwaukee does not have as solid of a goaltending duo as they are used to having in the 2 seasons that they made their Calder Cup runs, I also don't think you can count this Milwaukee Admirals team out from making another push. And like you said, players are going to have to step up their game, but you know what? That's a great opportunity. When it comes to Yaroslav Askarov, one of the things that I wanted to say about this situation is that I understand wanting to leave. And, people always say it's okay not to be brand loyal or company loyal or franchise loyal. I mean, ask Steven Stamkos how that pans out for you when you count on your franchise to do right by you. But a franchise is always going to do whatever it takes to win a Stanley Cup. And those are the decisions that Barry Trotz had to make right now. And Yaroslav Askarov is not the only one who is going to have to make some sacrifices. Now, his is going to be bigger because he's not going to get NHL time. But Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi are probably no longer going to be the guys on the power play. Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist could be out of a few playing minutes as well. Cody Glass just went to Eaton Park in Pittsburgh because of decisions that Barry Trotz has made to advance this team closer to a cup. So I think it's also important to say that while this does directly impact Yaroslav Askarov, it also impacts a lot of players on the team, the decisions that Trotz has made. And you don't have to be franchise loyal, but you don't have to be foolish. And I think what he should have done is compete well in camp, win some big games in Milwaukee, get back to contention, win a Calder Cup, or at least play well up until the trade deadline, where you can make a case for an NHL team to say, we're going to take a shot on him. Submit yourself to the teaching of Mitch Korn, the Yoda of the net, and let that go.
I agree with you. Like, it's not about loyalty. I don't think, I can at least speak for myself and say that my issue here is not with his loyalty to the Predators. Like, I get it. You got every man for himself. I get that.
Right.
You got to go succeed, make your money, whatever. Like, I get it that's totally fine. And, the issue is that it's not that, oh, he screwed over the Predators. No, he has screwed over himself. Like, no matter where he wants to play now, or no matter where he ends up playing, he has hurt himself in doing this. He could have just been patient. He could have gone, one more season. He could have let his game do the talking. And he didn't. And I'm just thinking, if I'm an NHL GM now, are there going to be teams interested in him? Of course. But I think if I'm an NHL GM, I'm going to think twice when, Barry Trotz is calling me saying, hey, we'll give you Askarov if you give us your top blue chip prospect and top draft picks. I'm going to be thinking twice if I'm that GM and be like, well, do I really? It seems like a very high risk. Now, potentially very high reward, but it just, the behavior pattern here is a little bit concerning for me.
As people who love Hamilton the musical, I just want to say you may have wanted to take Aaron Burr's advice. Talk less, smile more.
Oh, it's so true. And especially true with Askarov. Talk less, smile more.
Yeah, it would have been good. So who bears the blame for kind of this hot mess that we're in right now? We're going to discuss that, and we're going to talk about some best and worst case scenarios for a resolution coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. We are all driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree. Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and let them know you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, Emma, I know maybe it's a little immature, but I am here for this. Let's play the blame game. So when you look at this scenario, who is to blame, or what is the responsibility of both parties when you look at sort of this impasse that Barry Trotz and Yaroslav Askarov seem to be at?
I think, in any sort of disagreement, whether it's in, personal, professional, etc. I think, there's two sides to every story. And I do, like we've said, I do understand where Askarov's frustration is coming from. It's hard. It's hard when you see, if the organization is telling you to be patient and you're just seeing them make all these moves, like we're signing all these guys ahead of you when you think you're ready. I get it. I do. But I think most of the blame lies on Askarov's camp, whether it's him, his agent, whoever is telling him that this was a good idea, because I think it fails to take into account the big picture, and you're not doing the best thing for yourself as a player. And on the flip side, to play devil's advocate, I think that maybe, again, it's hard for me to say because I'm not, obviously I'm not present for any of these conversations. I don't know exactly what was said. But clearly there was some sort of disconnect there where Askarov, either he's not feeling appreciated or he's not feeling that he is being coached well, which I find very hard to believe, but hey, you never know. He's not being coached well, or he's not, he doesn't feel like he is in a place that can really bring out the best in him. If he maybe he has communicated that, or he feels like he has, in a more, diplomatic and respectful way. And if the organization chose to ignore that, and then he is now, as a result, making this bold statement, that kind of changes things a little bit. Again, I'm not reporting anything. I have no idea what happened there, but it's hard for me to, I think that Askarov does not look good in this situation.
Yes.
And I think now, you could say, oh, should the Predators have traded him right away when they signed UC Saros to the extension, and then they signed Scott Wedgwood to his deal? I mean, even with hindsight being 2020, no, because like you said, what's their option in Milwaukee? They don't really have a whole lot else there.
Right.
So it's like, unless you were trading him for another goalie, which doesn't make sense. I don't know. It's hard, try to play devil's advocate there, but it's hard for me to kind of come around to that way of thinking on this.
Yeah, I agree. I always come down to, with Barry Trotz and the decisions that he has made this offseason, including, signing Scott Wedgwood and this extension for UC Saros. It's a general manager's job to win a Stanley Cup. And it is a general manager's job to make sure the franchise is developing talent for the future. Like, those are his responsibilities. But at some point, those two things may not be able to happen at the exact same time. And I think that's where the Predators are now. Yaroslav Askarov may come out smelling like roses if Barry Trotz has sort of put all his eggs in this contention basket. And if that doesn't come to fruition, then you do feel like you have maybe wasted this first round pick, which is going to sit in the craw of the Nashville Predators fan base after just trading the 6th overall pick they had in Cody Glass. So I get that. I don't feel like Yaroslav Askarov has earned the opportunity yet in the NHL. And I don't feel like it's Barry Trotz's job or David Poyle's job before that to just give him the opportunity. You earn it, and you earn it the hard way. And that may be putting in the minutes in the AHL. The other thing that again, devil's advocate, is this just that Barry Trotz doesn't like Askarov's swagger or style? Barry Trotz is an old school kind of fella. Yaroslav Askarov is not. And so you wonder, like, okay, is some of this just he could be a great fit for the franchise, but you know what, I'm not willing to put up with some of the extracurriculars. I don't think there's a lot of that in this decision. I don't think there's a lot of that. Again, I come back to Yaroslav Askarov. You have to earn it, and you haven't quite done that yet. You haven't quite done that yet. And the franchise is in a different place. So, you know, this is a tough one because I really feel like Asky, buddy, it's not a good look.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that with, when it comes to the, Barry Trotz not being a fan of the showboating or the extracurriculars, like I think that's certainly part of it. I think that for Barry Trotz is gonna make him be like, all right, let's keep an eye on this one. But I don't think, I think at the end of the day, he's going to do what's best for the organization. And if he really thought that Askarov was the best thing for the organization, if he thought that promoting him to the NHL, making him the backup, if he really thought that was going to be this team's best chance to win, then that's what it would have been. And right. I think that it's hard because, like you said, maybe the old school versus the new school, whatever it is, there could be, arguments on either side of that. But at the same time, I keep coming back to, if Askarov did all of the showboating and the bench pressing and the extracurriculars and the fun, all the whimsical stuff, if he did that and then went out and played lights out in the playoffs and won a Calder Cup, or, didn't give up his starter's net, it would be a different story.
True.
Then I think, he might have a little bit more of a leg to stand on here. And I think he might have a little bit more of an argument to make about like, hey, I've proven that I'm ready. And it's like, well, bud, I don't know if you have. Like, and I think you kind of needed that extra year to let your game speak for itself. And it just right now, it seems like it's a lot of the words, a lot of the theatrics are what's speaking, and it's not actually his play. You quoted Aaron Burr in Hamilton. I'm going to quote another, just a timeless voice of a generation in Lil Wayne and say that in his infinite wisdom, he said, real G's move in silence like lasagna. And I'm just saying that it would appear that Yaroslav Askarov is not being a real G right now because he, you gotta, if you really are as good as you say you are, as you think you are, you put your head down and you prove it. You don't talk a big game if you can't back it up. And I'm not saying he can't, but I'm saying he hasn't yet. And now he's going to have the added pressure of having to back it up in a completely different organization if he does get traded. So, I mean, the best thing for him would have been to keep his mouth shut, come back, play his third year in the AHL, make it his best year yet, and just absolutely blow everyone away. And then we could be having a different conversation about like, ooh, Barry Trotz kind of screwed the pooch on this one. And he should have, he needs to trade him now while his value is high, or he needs to promote him, or he needs to trade Scott Wedgwood and promote Askarov. I don't know, we could just be having a very different conversation if he had let his play actually do the talking.
Yes. Yaroslav Askarov is banking on teams being highly trustworthy of his potential because he doesn't yet have the body of work to have come out and made the stand that he made. Absolutely leave the franchise if you feel like there is not the future that you want here. Absolutely leave the franchise. But doing it this way, you have now put Barry Trotz in a corner, and honey, nobody puts Barry Trotz in a corner. I mean, nobody puts baby in a corner because I don't think Barry Trotz, that's just not his jam.
I think you could have even, like, again, different situations, but I think even if you had done like a Ryan McDonough type thing in private and said,
It could have been an email.
so, yeah, exactly. Be like, hey, Barry, listen, if you can find a way to make it work, I would really like to be traded to a different organization. And, you work with the organization, you don't work against them. And again, I brought up Tyson Barrie yesterday, but we saw that happen. Now, this was different. I think in this case, it was the agent who really kind of messed it up for Tyson Barrie. But we saw how upset Barry Trotz was about that, and understandably. And it's like, hey, whoa, we could talk about this like adults, but if you're going to pull this, then guess what? You're not going anywhere.
Yeah. And we will have to wait and see what Barry Trotz does, because there are questions about what a trade would look like. Nashville does not have cap space. Everybody says, let's get a center, let's get a high quality winger. Great. We're going to pay you in pickles. Like there is a whole cap space argument to be made here. There is an argument to be made for what is he really going to bring, having done this the way that he did. Do the Nashville Predators, are they willing to trade for prospects and picks? There's a lot of question about this. There is a question about, will we just see Yaroslav Askarov sit? Well, we're going to keep our eye on this. We're going to wait and see what Barry Trotz does. We're going to wait and see what Yaroslav Askarov does. And we'll keep you updated on this soap opera in net unfolding with the Nashville Predators. Before we sign off from this episode, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at Ann_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio. You can, of course, find the podcast on social media at LO_Predators. And we are on YouTube and, of course, your favorite podcasting platform. If you want to discuss this further, as we have been doing all day long with our insiders, you can join our Locked On Predators Insider program. We have been texting back and forth about the situation, getting their read on things and sharing our thoughts. You can find information on how to join our insider program via subtext in the description of this video and in our bio as well. That's going to do it for today's episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back later this week with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.